Hello everybody and welcome to the Anti-Social Media YouTube channel. You're watching part 2 of the rise and fall of Andrew Lawrence, a comedian who I once respected so much. I was a massive fan. Everything he did was hilarious. I've seen him live countless times, and then he went and did some controversial things, including, let's say, being a tad racist, to put it lightly, and his career basically crumbled and died. If you haven't seen part 1 of this video series, then stop what you're doing right now and do go and watch it first. It's very important because that's all about the rise of Andrew Lawrence, why I'm such a big, or was such a big fan of his, showcasing some of the best comedy you will ever see any comedian ever make. And it's important you watch that so you can contrast with what you're going to see in this part 2 of the series. If you're a fan of comedy, of comedians, and of controversial comedians especially, then I do suggest you subscribe right now, because this Andrew Lawrence video is part of a series of videos about controversial comedians called Emergency on Planet Mirth. So called because a lot of comedians say controversial things and can benefit from those things, but a lot of the times, like Andrew Lawrence, you can say horrific things and your career completely dies. I've got videos about Nish Kumar coming up, who can anger the gammon so easily, and I explore exactly how he makes them so outraged at everything he says. And there's a video about Dave Chappelle too, who's got an apparent problem with trans people. I'll be investigating that further in a future video. So do subscribe, and you can find the entire series on a playlist on my channel on the main page. Just scroll down to the playlist called Emergency on Planet Mirth. Now I have to begin this part, which is about the decline of Andrew Lawrence and his career. I have to start with mentioning his comments about Mock the Week, because 7 years ago on Facebook he posted the following thing. I can't help but notice increasingly a lot of political comedians cracking cheap and easy gags about UKIP to the extent that it's got hack, boring and lazy very quickly. Particularly too much moronic liberal backslapping on panel shows like Mock the Week, where ageing, balding, fat men, ethnic comedians and women posing as comedians sit congratulating themselves on how enlightened they are about the fact that UKIP are ridiculous and pathetic. But in general, that is really all that people remember about the Mock the Week statement that he made. In fact, that little button there that says see more reveals a much worse side of him. He goes on to mention how UKIP aren't actually a joke and how they've actually done well in various elections, calling everybody else out of touch and smug, taking a supercilious, moralising tone. He mentions political correctness. He said that UKIP have resonated with voters because everyone else is too spineless to tackle the issue of immigration. And what is basically remembered as a statement about Mock the Week becomes a diatribe about how immigration policy in Britain is terrible and how there's too many foreigners in the country and so forth. And he has the gall near the end of this diatribe to say, I can't say I'm a UKIP supporter as such, but I can see why other people are, and I don't disrespect them for being a supporter. Yeah, of course you're not. Of course you're not a supporter of a far-right party, Andrew. There's nothing in this that even implies that you are. Now, I don't know about you, right, but if you're on Twitter and you see Nigel Farage posting something borderline racist or saying something ridiculously stupid, and you decide to go into his replies to tear him a new one, you'll eventually see that people might reply to you. And a lot of those people will say things like, listen, I'm not a big fan of Nigel Farage. I don't agree with everything he says, but, and then they agree with everything he's ever said. In fact, they probably get a little bit more racist openly than he can be on Twitter themselves, okay? And that's kind of reminds me of Andrew Lawrence in this statement. Yeah, I'm not really a UKIP fan, but everything they stand for, I agree with and endorse 100%. I've had it up to here with people calling me a UKIP boy. No way am I far right. I just think that if we goose-stepped around a bit more and put more people in camps, things will be a lot better. What's wrong with that? He basically goes on to say how, the BBC is all liberal, etc. And this is before the word woke was invented and then taken by the right and the far right to mean literally anything they dislike. Because otherwise, this would be peppered with the word woke in every other word in this statement. But you get what I mean, right? Now, you may remember whilst watching part 1 of the Andrew Lawrence story here, that I had a lot of footage from July last year, which I recorded after he made his racist jokes, which I'll be talking about later here. So from now, March 2022, let's go back and see me from July 2021 to discuss Andrew Lawrence further. I'm not sure a lot of people realise that shortly after making the controversial statement about Mock the Week and becoming a pariah in the world of comedy and for anyone onlooking, Andrew Lawrence's career didn't really die at that point. In fact, he was getting regular club work all the time. He even modelled himself as being one of those too controversial for TV style comedians, and it all culminated with him having a tour off the back of this controversy, and he was the focus of a Sky Arts documentary about the statement and about the fallout around it. Now, the trailer for that programme does look very good indeed, but the show itself was a very poor dissection of the whole situation.
Be no more powerful fuel than anger. But the danger with anger is it's also one of the most toxic fuels.
Tonight, the price of a joke.
He's been a sensation, and now you're going to find out why.
I don't want to say it feels like he's caught a controversy deliberately, but he has.
It seemed to come completely out of nowhere. It was a huge deal. It was a massive deal.
He was looking for other sounds, something other than the sound of the laughter spectrum.
So despite being cancelled before being cancelled was even a thing, I ended up going to see Andrew Lawrence on his first tour after that controversial statement he made. And, there were a few walkouts when he took the piss out of the NHS, or possibly it was teachers. It was a long time ago, give me a break. And it was a bit more right-wing than normal, despite him refusing to describe himself as a right-wing comedian. But overall, it was the same old Andrew Lawrence stuff. Good joke writing, good performing, and pretty funny overall, and nothing really had changed, except for the fact that it was a little bit more topical than normal, as you probably would expect. More real life situations, including, of course, talking about himself, as he was one of the big news stories of that period. And it reminded me of the time he was on Stand Up for the Week on Channel 4, a short-lived 4-series show that started in 2010. And, launched or helped launch the careers of many comedians: Josh Widdicombe, Sarah Pascoe, Paul Chowdhury, John Richardson, and Andrew Lawrence as well. At least it was supposed to, but the other guys are, a little bit more famous than he is. But he was bubbling under the surface. So it was a very strange thing indeed to see, roughly about a year after that programme was broadcast, him destroying all the work he's done in that regards by having a go at other people on TV, in a slightly sort of bigoted way. My favourite section of the tour post-controversy was his reaction to other comedians' reactions to his controversy. Here's a clip from it.
I put this post up on Facebook because I'm an idiot. What a stupid thing to do. It's inviting trouble, but then I'm getting these thousands of hate messages, and I think, I should just take it down for a quiet life. But I think, oh no, why would I do that? Because that means I've been bullied, and that's quite scary if everyone did that. And I can't. I left it up and it snowballed. Within days, there were articles slagging me off in the Guardian and the Independent. The whole thing really ruined my dad's scrapbook of all my press cuttings. Then somehow Nigel Farage got wind of this post that I put on Facebook, and he wrote an article in the Independent saying how rare it was to find someone so honest working in the entertainment industry. And that's how you know you're in trouble. And then Frankie Boyle found out about it, and he wrote an article in the Guardian slagging me off in quite a high-minded, self-righteous tone, which I found extraordinary. Who would have thought, after all the jokes about Madeleine McCann, Katie Price's disabled child, Rebecca Adlington's face, thalidomide children, the Hillsborough disaster, his next career move would be taking the moral fucking high ground. Me thinking he was just a money-grubbing controversialist with all the personal dignity of a dog in a sausage factory. Clearly I'm mistaken. Seems to have reinvented himself as some sort of self-righteous socialist crusader. Good luck with the midlife crisis, Frankie. And then Dara O'Brien accused me of being bitter and self-delusional. He might be right. How would I know if I was self-delusional? I wouldn't fucking know about it. I reject the accusation I'm bitter because I suspect he means he thinks I'm bitter I've not been on Mock the Week, which suggests he's self-delusional enough to imagine that is a genuine career aspiration for any self-respecting comedian. It isn't. It's a cheaply produced tabloid panel show where often really good comedians go on because they got no other TV outlet for their talent, so they go on Mock the Week and they make cheap, easy conveyor belt jokes and obvious targets, and they fucking hate themselves for it, but they do it to build their tour following and line their pockets, and you can't blame them because it represents an entirely joyless commercial endeavour. Nobody wants to be there. Represents stand-up comedy in its lowest form. Accusing a comedian of being bitter about not getting on Mock the Week is a little bit like accusing a builder of being bitter because his children won't let him play with their Lego. Nonetheless, if they offered it to me, I'm not a fucking idiot. And then Stuart Lee got wind of this Facebook post that I wrote, the comedian Stuart Lee, and he decided, he wrote an article about it in The Guardian. Not that it had anything to do with him, but he had a new DVD to sell, so he thought he'd chip in with his opinion. And he said, the truth is, all Andrew Lawrence's colleagues in comedy that I met over the weekend expressed genuine concern about his mental well-being. Wow. I'm sure they did, Stuart, but there again you do tend to mix in very specific circles, don't you? You smug, elitist Oxbridge cunt. Clever man, Stuart, you remind your audience of it every time you go on stage. You berate your audience and the critics sitting there for not being as clever as you are for 20 minutes, and then you spend an hour delivering GCSE level left-wing agitprop. You're fucking hilarious, mate, but for none of the reasons that you intended. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, the day I take lessons in integrity from mainstream millionaire establishment BBC comedian Stuart Lee is the day I should be fucking sectioned. You carry on cashing in, Stuart, you rancid fucking imposter. Anyway, it's fair to say I was quite angry about it. The important thing is I haven't let it get to me.
Now, the only problem with that comedy routine is that he claims he's not bitter, but if you pardon my wording, he's got a funny way of showing it, hasn't he? He began making videos for YouTube, mainly using characters which aren't a patch on his stand-up at all, but despite that, he managed to pick up an audience from it, and the pandemic really did wonders for him, as he obviously couldn't go to any gigs at all, so he really focused on making topical videos all the time, and has a Patreon which he, I assume, relies on in this day and age because of COVID. So as for current stand-up, I did watch a show he made at Comedy Unleashed, which I believe is at Lee Hurst's comedy club, Say No More. And it's supposed to be a free speech night where you can be as offensive as you want. And it's kind of marketed as a very dangerous sort of show. However, I do know that a lot of left-wing comedians who aren't offensive in any way whatsoever have done that show. And Andrew Lawrence's set in particular was, you know, testing the boundaries a little bit, but again, it was the same old Andrew Lawrence stuff of just good joke writing, very funny, and overall not really that offensive. What I do like is the finish to his show, which had a very clever joke, which went like this.
Yeah, that's it, more or less. My comedy is very much like a Jew's penis. Doesn't have a proper ending. Is that the time?
So I've made it pretty clear how much I do or did admire, respect and love Andrew Lawrence. So it's just so sad that he's managed to stoop so low twice in his career to say just shitty things online. Really disappointing. What motivates him to derail his career like that? Not once, but twice. What's also depressingly inevitable is when people who are caught out going too far, going too extreme, saying the wrong thing, not in a, oh, I'm, trying to be edgy sort of way, but just being a cunt, right? When they get caught out by that, it's inevitable that they always blame other people for their own fuck-ups, right? In Andrew Lawrence's case, and many people who have defended him, they blame the woke people the woke Stasi, as Andrew Lawrence calls them, for his fuck up, for being cancelled when he cancelled himself with what he said and then got rid of his Twitter himself. He wasn't removed from Twitter. And now, because of what he said, people don't want to touch him with a barge pole. He cancelled himself, but it's the woke Stasi's fault in his eyes. Like I say, this is inevitable. This happens for two reasons. First of all, you're pandering to a certain crowd of people who want to believe that they're under attack from left-wing people all the time, or woke people all the time. As I said before in many YouTube videos, if the team you support have been in power for 11, 12 years and are likely to be in power for another 11 or 12 years, you know, you need an enemy. And because you don't have one, there's no one to challenge you and challenge that power. And there's no one to hold Boris and all of his friends accountable. They can literally get away with anything. You've got to invent an enemy. And it really helps that when you fuck up, you can blame someone for that fuck up, even though anybody with any fucking sense knows that you're the one to blame for that fuck up. But like the previous fallout from the previous controversy, I don't think it will necessarily prevent Andrew Lawrence from earning a living. Now, to be fair, he's not going to get as much as he did last time around by not being able to work in any comedy clubs. But how long will that last for when you bear in mind people like Louis C.K. are already working again? He could theoretically restore his Twitter or start a new one and get loads of followers straight away, but that may not last too long, bearing in mind he's got a sort of a history of being controversial and could easily say something stupid again. But as we see time and time again, people who go too far and have platforms taken away from them or are simply unemployable tend to make less money, funnily enough. They get less attention, funnily enough, and they quickly lose all relevance. And I both worry that will happen to Andrew Lawrence, but at the same time, he does kind of deserve it. So without any comedy clubs booking him, and without an agent who dropped him immediately after his statement about the England players, if that stays that way, the only way Andrew Lawrence can make money, it seems, is from Patreon. And there is an audience for that very poor comedy he makes on YouTube compared to his outstanding stand-up comedy. I'm more than happy to eat my words if somehow he can make a living out of just those videos. And if he does, I promise you that my videos will be just as shit as well in the future. Andrew Lawrence's main concern at this point should be, what type of audience does he retain after these two controversies? Will it be people who can tolerate his attacks on women and minorities or famous black people? Or is it people who enjoy his attacks on women, minorities and famous black people? Because there's a name for those type of people who enjoy that kind of thing, isn't there, you know? And in order to entertain those type of people, does one have to continue saying controversial things? Does one have to maybe tailor their act to becoming more extreme? Here's a clip from, I believe, a few years before he made the Mockler Week statement. It's a good joke that I really like. It stands the test of time. But ask yourself, after watching this particular clip, the few people who make up Andrew Lawrence's audience at the moment, would they tolerate the joke you're just about to watch nowadays? Would they tolerate any future jokes like that? Because one imagines the subject matter he's about to joke about, they have a very different take and view about that particular subject matter.
I'm 30 now. I turned 30 a few months ago. Give me a cheer if you're over 30. 1, 2, 3. I thought so. I thought I could smell something rotting. And no, I like it. I like being 30. Is anybody over 50? Give me a cheer. 1, 2, 3. Well, congratulations. I take my hat off to you. You've done a wonderful job. If you're over 50, you've used up all the oil. You've messed up the environment. You've plunged us all into this global economic crisis. You gave yourself cheap housing, full employment, free education. You've sold my generation down the river. Now you expect me to pick up the pieces of your broken world? You disgust me, old people. You disgust me. These days, the young people get out of university with their 5-figure student loan debt and their degree. There's no job for them because you old people won't retire, will you? Go on working year after year, clogging up the job market, then you do retire, but you won't die. Why won't you die? Why can't you just die? But welcome, and
Personally, Andrew Lawrence may flirt with being a bit more extreme in the future via those terrible comedy characters he does on YouTube, but I honestly believe he never will go full Chubby Brown. And if Andrew Lawrence is ever allowed to return back to stand-up, his act just won't work as being an extremist, essentially. It just doesn't work. There are, of course, a tiny amount of comedians around today who tell extreme jokes, you could say, racist, sexist jokes that appear like that on the surface anyway, and can just about get away with those jokes as well and make them funny as well. But it's simply not Andrew's style to go exactly like this guy, for example. What baffles me is that if we're led to believe all the people who follow Andrew Lawrence and people like that, they're all crying out for there to be less woke entertainment, less woke comedy. They want the reverse of that on stage in front of them, which is essentially right-wing comedy, conservative comedy. And there is a mould that has been set by a man who I am a massive fan of. If anyone has watched any of my videos in the past, I've lost count how many times I say that I absolutely love Jeff Norcott, despite the fact that I'm not even right-wing. It's because he is a conservative comedian who is able to write jokes first and foremost, a thing that people find impossible if they are right-wing and want to do comedy. It's all well and good saying the word soy boy over and over again, or doing your one trans joke, I identify as this, that and the other, but he actually writes proper jokes. Andrew Lawrence has that ability as well. He has a right-leaning viewpoint. Andrew Lawrence appears to have that as well. He appears on TV, on radio. He's basically representing the entire conservative community in this country, comedy-wise. Andrew Lawrence doesn't have that. And do you know why that is? It's because Jeff Norcott, Andrew Lawrence, and all the other right-wing comics have something that separates them, right? One thing that makes this guy successful and these guys unsuccessful is because this guy isn't a massive cunt. Yeah, you can be a little bit of a cunt if you want, controversial and so forth, but if you're a massive cunt, then this guy is going to be the only popular, only relatable, only entertaining conservative comedian there is. This goldmine is awaiting for people who just follow that model, and every single time they fall at the first hurdle by being a proper prick. You could argue that I'm triggered by the fact that Andrew Lawrence fucked it up so badly. It was there for the taking, and In conclusion, the whole ending to Andrew Lawrence's career, and indeed the Mock of the Week statement, is just so sad to watch, you know, especially when it's someone I respected so much. I just can't work out what he's going to do next, if anything. I mean, the man needs to earn money. He's got a family to feed. So, does he have a career of being an awful, awful cunt? Or does he have to go down the job centre pronto because he has no other options? All I know is he's only got himself to blame, and the whole situation, as an observer and as a fan, is very, very sad indeed. Thank you very much for watching part 2 of potentially a 3-part series about Andrew Lawrence's rise and fall. The third part, if I can be bothered, is about his darkest jokes that he's ever made, jokes that should have gotten cancelled rather than him just being a racist prick on Twitter. Plus, I'll be showing you some reactions of the comments I've got for the first and eventually the second part of this series from people who hate being labelled far right, but then go on to say everything far right that you can imagine. Now, Andrew Lawrence has got a Patreon, so I might as well plug my wares as well. I do have a Patreon. It's quite small. It's basically for your anti-social media super fan, because there's a lot of bonus content on there which is quite niche, shall we say. But if you want to contribute, then you pay per video, but I only upload once every 2 months or so. So if you put $1 in, £1, something like that, you'll get a whole 5 bonus videos for about £6, $6 a year. I think that's a pretty good deal myself. But if I'm honest with you, if you really enjoyed this, I prefer that you just threw £1 or $2, $1 or $2 in my PayPal account, and the links are below in the description box. Click on the PayPal one, send me a bit of your spare change, and I'll be very grateful. Basically, I'm not a rich man, and it's kind of just gives me a bit of extra money for Sainsbury's, really, because cost of living crisis and all that. So yeah, just help us out if you want to. Other than that, do subscribe, because there's plenty more videos about other comedians that piss people off in various different ways, and reactions to that, whether it's benefited them or it's negatively impacted on them, in my series called Emergency on Planet Mirth. Remember, you can watch the entire series on a playlist. Go to my main channel page, scroll down to Emergency on Planet Mirth playlist, and you'll watch all the videos there. And I do make other stuff as well, and you can check out my playlist, Gammon Box. Pretty self-explanatory there. You can guess what those videos are about, can't you? So, until next time, thank you very much for watching, and see ya.